She ruled the boardroom, not the streets, until a stranger fought for her. Blood trickled down Elise Montgomery's perfectly manicured fingers as she clutched her designer handbag like a shield. The CEO who commanded respect in corporate America now cowered in a dimly lit alley, her power suit torn and soiled. Then a shadow moved, not her attacker returning, but someone else. Someone who would change everything. If you've ever wondered what happens when two worlds collide and strength comes from the most unexpected places, this is a story you won't want to miss. Like and subscribe to follow more stories that explore the unexpected connections that transform lives. Elise Montgomery had always been untouchable. At 42, she was the youngest female CEO in her industry, with a corner office overlooking Manhattan and a reputation that made grown men nervous in boardrooms. Her life was meticulously organized, from her premium penthouse apartment to her carefully curated wardrobe of power suits. She had mastered the art of corporate warfare, but the streets operated by different rules she never needed to learn. Until now. The quarterly board meeting had run later than expected. Discussions about the upcoming merger had been tense, with several board members pushing back against her aggressive strategy. But Elise had prevailed, as she always did. By the time she left the office, the sky had darkened, and her usual car service was unavailable due to a system outage. Annoyed but undeterred, she decided to walk the few blocks to find a taxi, her mind still processing the meeting's outcomes. She didn't notice when the well-dressed man began following her. Didn't register the danger until he directed her into an alley with something hard pressed against her back. The mugging was quick and efficient, her watch, her jewelry, her bag. But when she instinctively resisted as he grabbed for her grandmother's necklace, his demeanor changed. The blow came fast, knocking her to the ground. As he raised his hand again, Elise realized that all her corporate power meant nothing here. That's when Marcus appeared. A tall figure moving with surprising speed for his size, shouting words Elise couldn't process through her fear. There was a scuffle, the sound of running feet, and then silence except for her own ragged breathing. When she finally looked up, her attacker was gone, and a man in worn jeans and a faded hoodie was extending his hand toward her. "You're bleeding," he said simply. "Let me help you." Marcus Jones had been homeless for 8 months. Before that, he'd been a construction worker with an apartment, a girlfriend, and plans. Then came the accident on site, the back injury, the opioid prescription that turned into an addiction, and the slow, devastating collapse of everything he'd built. Now, at 36, he lived in a shelter when beds were available and on the streets when they weren't. He knew these alleys better than anyone with a home ever would. Elise's first instinct was to refuse his help, to scramble away from this stranger who represented a world she deliberately avoided. But something in his steady gaze made her pause. There was no pity there, no judgment, just a straightforward offer of assistance. She took his hand. "I need to call the police," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Marcus nodded but didn't move. "Your phone's gone, I'm guessing." "Mine doesn't work anymore. There's a diner around the corner where they know me. They'll let you use their phone." The walk to the diner was silent. Elise was acutely aware of her torn clothing, the blood on her hands, and the man walking beside her who seemed completely at ease in this neighborhood that terrified her. When they arrived, the waitress behind the counter took one look at Elise and rushed over. "Oh honey, what happened?" "Marcus, what's going on?" "She was mugged," Marcus explained. "Needs to use your phone, Darlene." While Elise made her calls, first to the police, then to her assistant, Marcus sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee that Darlene had placed before him without being asked. Elise noticed how the waitress treated him with familiar kindness, not the wariness she might have expected. When she finished her calls, she found herself joining him at the counter. "Thank you," she said formally. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't intervened." Marcus shrugged. "I know what happens when no one does." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. His face was weathered but not old, with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold stories she couldn't imagine. For the first time, she wondered about the path that had led him to that alley tonight. The police arrived, took statements, and offered to drive Elise home. As she was leaving, she turned back to Marcus, who remained at the counter. "I owe you," she said. He smiled slightly. "No, you don't. But if you want to do something, buy Darlene's coffee next time you're around. She gives away more than she sells." Elise nodded, suddenly uncomfortable with the inadequacy of her gratitude. As the police car pulled away, she watched Marcus through the window, a solitary figure under the harsh diner lights. She thought that would be the end of it. A strange, frightening interlude in her otherwise controlled life. She would increase her security, be more careful, and eventually file the incident away as a cautionary tale. But 3 days later, as she was leaving her office building, she saw him again, sitting on a bench across the street, a backpack at his feet. Without analyzing her actions, she crossed to him. "Are you following me?" Marcus looked up, surprise evident on his face. "No. This is just a good spot. The security guards here don't chase people away if they're quiet." Elise glanced back at her building, seeing it suddenly through different eyes. "You sit here often?" "When it's not raining." He studied her. "You look better. No more blood." She touched her cheek self-consciously, where a small bruise was hidden under makeup. "I'm fine. I was just surprised to see you." An awkward silence fell between them, two people with no natural reason to be speaking to each other. Finally, Elise said, "Have you eaten? I could buy you dinner." "As thanks." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "There's a place around the corner. Nothing fancy, but the food's good." The restaurant was indeed nothing like the establishments Elise frequented. A small family-owned place with mismatched chairs and tables too close together. But the smells from the kitchen made her realize she was genuinely hungry for the first time since the attack. Over plates of simple but delicious food, they began to talk. At first, it was stilted, Elise asking polite questions about how long Marcus had been in the city, Marcus giving brief answers. But gradually, something shifted. Perhaps it was the absence of their usual contexts. She wasn't a CEO here, and he wasn't just a homeless man. They were simply two people sharing a meal. Marcus told her about his life before homelessness, his job in construction, his dreams of starting his own small contracting business. He spoke without self-pity about the injury that had derailed everything, the addiction that followed, and his ongoing struggle to rebuild some semblance of stability. "The hardest part isn't being without things," he explained. "It's being invisible. People look right through you, like you're already a ghost." Elise thought about how many times she must have walked past people like Marcus, her eyes sliding away, her pace quickening. "I've been one of those people," she admitted. He nodded, not accusingly but with simple acknowledgement. "Most people are. It's easier." "What about you?" he asked after a while. "You don't seem like someone who usually walks alone at night in that neighborhood." Elise found herself telling him about the meeting that had run late, but then, surprisingly, about the pressures of her position, the constant need to prove herself in a male-dominated industry, the loneliness of leadership. She spoke about things she rarely acknowledged even to herself, how success had isolated her, how relationships had become transactional, how even her closest friends seemed to want something from her. "Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a role," she confessed. CEO Elise is confident and decisive and always in control. But that night in the alley, I realized how thin that veneer really is. Marcus listened without interrupting, his attention so complete that Elise felt truly heard in a way she hadn't experienced in years. When the restaurant began closing around them, she was startled to realize how much time had passed. Outside, the night air was cool against her face. "Where will you go now?" she asked. "There's a shelter on 28th that might have space," he said. "If not, I know some safe spots." The idea of him sleeping outside while she returned to her luxury apartment created a dissonance she couldn't ignore. "I have a guest room," she heard herself saying. "You could stay there tonight." As soon as the words left her mouth, she questioned her sanity. Inviting a stranger, a homeless man, into her home went against every safety rule she lived by. But Marcus wasn't a stranger anymore, not really. And he had already proven himself when it mattered most. Marcus studied her face. "That's not necessary. I've been managing on my own for a while now." "I know it's not necessary," Elise replied. "But it's what I want to offer. Just for tonight." After a long moment, he nodded. "Okay. Thank you." The ride to her apartment in the car that had been waiting for her was silent. Elise could feel her driver's curious glances in the rearview mirror but ignored them. When they arrived at her building, the doorman's expression as he held the door for Marcus spoke volumes, but Elise met his eyes with a challenging stare that shut down any potential comment. Her apartment, with its minimalist design and expensive furnishings, seemed suddenly ostentatious as Marcus stood in the entryway, his worn backpack in hand. "The guest room is this way," she said, leading him down a hallway. "Bathrooms connected. There should be towels and everything you need." Marcus took in the space with a careful gaze. "This is very kind of you." "It's the least I can do," Elise replied. "Get some rest. We can figure out next steps in the morning." Alone in her bedroom later, Elise questioned her impulsive decision. What did she think would happen next? Was this guilt, gratitude, or something else driving her actions? She had built her career on calculated risks, but this felt different, personal in a way her business decisions never were. In the morning, she found Marcus already awake, his borrowed bed neatly made. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows in her living room, looking out at the city spread below. "It's different from up here," he said without turning. "More like a map than a place." Elise joined him at the window. "I used to love this view. Lately, I hardly notice it." They had coffee together, an oddly domestic scene that should have felt uncomfortable but somehow didn't. As they talked, an idea began forming in Elise's mind, tentative at first, then gaining clarity. "My company has a foundation," she explained. "We fund various initiatives, including some focused on housing and employment. There's a new program we're developing for job training and placement. It's still in the planning stages, but we need someone with practical experience to consult on it." Marcus set down his coffee cup. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity," Elise clarified. "Your perspective would be valuable. You understand challenges that most of our team can't even imagine. It would be paid work, of course." He was quiet for a long moment. "I haven't held a regular job in almost a year. And I don't have a permanent address." "Those are practical problems with practical solutions," Elise said, slipping into her problem-solving mode. "The foundation has transitional housing partnerships. As for qualifications, you have life experience that's directly relevant to the work." "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked, his gaze direct. Elise considered deflecting with talk of corporate social responsibility or foundation missions, but the honesty between them deserved to be maintained. "Because you helped me when I needed it, without expecting anything in return. Because I have resources and connections that could make a difference. And because talking to you last night made me realize how disconnected I've become from anything real." Marcus didn't immediately accept. He asked questions about the foundation, the program, what would be expected of him. His thoughtfulness impressed Elise. This wasn't a man looking for handouts but someone considering whether he could genuinely contribute. "I'd need to get clean," he said finally. "Completely. I've been trying, but without stability." "The foundation partners with recovery programs," Elise told him. "That could be part of the arrangement." They spent the morning outlining possibilities, Elise making calls to her foundation director, explaining the situation in broad terms. By afternoon, they had the beginnings of a plan: a 3-month consulting contract for Marcus, enrollment in a recovery program with supportive housing, and a clear path toward potential longer-term employment if the arrangement worked for both parties. "This isn't charity," Elise emphasized as they reviewed the details. "This is an exchange. Your insights for our support. If it doesn't work out, we both walk away." Marcus nodded. "I understand. And I appreciate the clarity." As he prepared to leave, to meet with the foundation director and begin the intake process for the recovery program, Elise felt an unexpected reluctance to see him go. Their brief connection had shaken something loose in her, a recognition of how isolated she had become in her tower of success. "I'd like to stay in touch," she said. "Beyond the foundation work. Maybe dinner again sometime." Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "I'd like that too." The next few months brought changes for both of them. Marcus threw himself into recovery and his consulting work with determination that impressed everyone at the foundation. His practical suggestions about the job training program, from scheduling that accommodated people with complicated lives to addressing barriers like lack of professional clothing or transportation, transformed the initiative from well-intentioned to truly effective. For Elise, the changes were more subtle but equally profound. Her conversations with Marcus continued, evolving from occasional dinners to regular exchanges about their respective days. She found herself bringing challenges from her corporate world to him, valuing his straightforward perspective that cut through the politics and posturing she navigated daily. "You've created a culture where everyone's afraid to make mistakes," he told her once, after she described a project that had stalled because team members kept deferring decisions upward. "Nobody innovates when they're terrified of failure." His observation stung because it was true. Elise had built her success on demanding perfection, from herself first, but also from everyone around her. She began to see how that approach, which had served her rise to the top, was now limiting her company's growth and her own leadership. Gradually, she implemented changes. Created space for calculated risks. Celebrated learning from failures rather than just punishing them. Her executive team was initially wary, then increasingly engaged as they realized her commitment to this new approach was genuine. For months after their first meeting, Elise invited Marcus to attend a foundation gala as her guest. He arrived in a new suit, looking healthy and confident in a way that made her heart skip unexpectedly. As they circulated among donors and board members, she watched him engage people with his direct manner and thoughtful questions, never pretending to be something he wasn't but holding his own in this world that would have excluded him months before. "Your friend is remarkable," one of her board members commented. "Such an interesting perspective on our housing initiative." "He is," Elise agreed, feeling a surge of something that might have been pride but felt warmer, more personal. Later that evening, as they stood on the terrace of the venue looking out at the city lights, Marcus said, "I'm being offered a full-time position with the foundation. Running the new employment program." "I know," Elise replied. "They consulted me. I told them they'd be fools not to hire you." He turned to face her. "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it. Given our friendship." The hesitation before the word friendship hung between them. Elise realized they had been carefully maintaining that definition of their relationship, neither acknowledging how it had evolved into something more complex. "Our friendship is separate from your work," she said carefully. "You've earned this position on your own merits." Marcus nodded, but his eyes held a question he didn't voice. Elise found herself taking a step closer to him. "The truth is, knowing you has changed me," she admitted. "Made me see things differently, my company, my life, what really matters." "You've changed me too," he said quietly. "Given me back a future when I thought mine was over." The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Marcus gently took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I don't know if this makes sense, us. We come from such different worlds." Elise looked at their joined hands. "Maybe that's exactly why it makes sense. We both needed to see beyond our own limited perspectives."